This happened in December of 2021, back when I was still living alone in a small house on the edge of town. Behind my property was a massive cornfield that stretched for acres, though by winter it was nothing but brittle, dead stalks sticking up from the frozen ground. I'd lived there for years, and every winter was the same, quiet, empty, just the sound of wind moving through the bare rows. But that December, something felt different. It started one night around the second week of the month. I was sitting in the living room reading when I heard something outside. It wasn't the wind. It sounded like footsteps, slow, heavy, crunching through the frost-covered ground behind my house. I went to the back door and looked out, but there was nothing. Just the cornfield, pale and still under the moonlight. I told myself it was probably an animal, maybe a deer passing through. But the sound kept coming back every few nights. Always the same, footsteps pacing along the edge of the field. A few days later, my neighbor stopped by to drop off some mail that had been mixed up. He asked if I'd seen anyone strange out there lately. Apparently, his motion light had gone off 3 times in the middle of the night. But when he went to check, no one was there. That's when I started keeping the back porch light on. One night, about a week before Christmas, I took my dog out back before bed. She stopped halfway down the porch steps and started growling. Her eyes were locked on the cornfield. I followed her gaze and froze. There was someone standing out there, right at the line where the field began. A tall figure, motionless, barely visible in the dim light. I couldn't make out a face. Couldn't even tell if they were wearing a coat or just dark clothing. But they were watching me. I shouted, asking what they wanted. The figure didn't move. It just stood there until a gust of cold wind blew through the stalks. And when I blinked, they were gone. I called the sheriff the next morning. He sent a deputy out who walked through the frozen field for nearly half an hour, but didn't find anything. No footprints, no signs of anyone camping or hiding out there. Just broken stalks and disturbed snow. For a few days things were quiet again. I thought maybe whoever it was had moved on. But then on December 21st, in the night of the first real snow, I woke up around 2 a.m. to a noise I'll never forget. It was tapping. On my bedroom window, 3 slow taps, then silence. Then 3 more. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I just stared toward the window, knowing there was no way anyone could reach it without a ladder. The tapping stopped after maybe 30 seconds, but I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning I went outside and saw the prints in the snow. Bare footprints, human, leading from the edge of the field to directly below my window. But there were no return tracks. Just one path in, ending right there. I called the sheriff again. They searched the area, found nothing, and told me to keep my doors locked. That night I barricaded every door and window. I left the lights on in the kitchen and stayed awake in the living room with my dog. Around midnight I heard it again, the same footsteps crunching through the snow outside. This time they were close. I turned off the TV and listened. The sound circled the house once, twice, and then stopped at the front door. There was a pause, and then knock, 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 slow, deliberate knocks that echoed through the quiet house. I didn't answer. I didn't move. My dog growled from beside the couch, staring at the door. After maybe a minute, the knocking stopped, replaced by soft, dragging footsteps heading back toward the cornfield. When the sheriff came out again the next morning, they found the same footprints as before, bare, human, and deep in the snow, leading straight back into the field. A week later, after a hard freeze, the farmer who owned that property decided to clear the last of the stalks. Deep inside, in a small flattened section near the center, he found an old sleeping bag, a lantern, and what looked like a collection of broken dolls, dozens of them, with their faces cut open or carved away. They never found whoever had been staying out there. And to this day, when the wind blows across an empty field on a cold December night, I can still swear I hear the sound of footsteps crunching through the frost. Coming closer. Behind my neighborhood is a decent-sized forest with a network of trails for hiking and backpacking. I'd been hiking there for years and knew most of the trails by heart. By late autumn, the forest was empty, the kind of empty that feels unnatural. All the leaves had fallen. The air had that brittle, cold edge to it. And I figured I might get one last camping trip in before the real winter weather hit. So, one Friday morning I packed my gear and drove to the trailhead. No cars were parked nearby, and along the 8-mile hike in I didn't see a single person. Just a silent, leafless forest stretching in every direction. I found a familiar clearing just off the trail where I'd camped before. A small flat patch of ground surrounded by trees that blocked the wind. I set up my tent, built a fire ring, and got a small fire going. As the daylight faded, I made a cup of instant coffee and sat by the fire watching the last orange light fade through the trees. That's when I noticed something. It wasn't clear at first, just a sense of movement. Something shifting between the trees in the distance. I couldn't make out a shape, but it looked like someone, or something, was moving just far enough away to stay hidden. I tried to convince myself it was just an animal, probably a deer. The woods are full of them, and when the light starts to go, everything looks different. But the feeling that I was being watched wouldn't go away. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the temperature dropped fast. The wind picked up cold and sharp. I decided to get inside my tent, crawl into my sleeping bag, and warm up. I left the flap tied open just a bit so I could see the campfire flickering outside. The orange glow was comforting, but everything beyond that was pitch black. I've camped alone dozens of times, but that night felt different. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, and like the forest itself was holding its breath. Hours passed. The fire had burned low when I heard it. The sound of slow, deliberate footsteps crunching through dead leaves. They came from directly behind my tent. I froze. The sound got closer and closer until it stopped. Maybe 5 or 10 feet behind me. I couldn't breathe. Every muscle in my body locked up. I wanted to look, but the fear was paralyzing. For nearly a minute, the only sound was the wind and my own heartbeat. Then, just when I couldn't take it anymore, I unzipped my sleeping bag, grabbed my flashlight, and burst out of the tent, shining the beam into the trees. Nothing. The forest was empty. Not a sound. I hadn't heard anyone run away. No branches breaking. Nothing. I turned in circles, scanning every direction, my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. The only thing that moved was the smoke from my dying fire. I'd told myself I was imagining it. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe I was just overtired. But as I started to pack up my things, trying to calm down, I heard it again. Footsteps, fast, heavy, moving from right behind my tent. I swung the flashlight toward the sound and caught the briefest glimpse of something darting between the trees. I froze again. And then he stepped out. A man. He walked toward the edge of the firelight, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing torn jeans, a dirty fleece jacket, and a black beanie. He looked like he hadn't shaved or slept in days. His eyes were hollow and unfocused, and when he spoke, his voice was low and rough. "You shouldn't be out here alone," I didn't respond. Every instinct screamed at me to back away. The man took a step closer, his eyes fixed on me like he was trying to decide something. Then his expression changed. His face twisted into this strange, almost blank stare, like he'd realized I was about to run. And that's exactly what I did. I turned and bolted straight into the trees. I could hear him chasing me, heavy boots hitting the frozen ground just a few steps behind. But after maybe 30 seconds, the sound faded. Either he stopped or I lost him. I didn't stop running until my legs gave out. When I finally did stop, I had no idea where I was. My flashlight was dying, the fire back at camp was long gone, and I was completely turned around. I sat with my back against a tree, clutching my pack, and waited out the night. Every once in a while I'd hear movement, faint footsteps far off in the darkness. I don't know if it was him or just the forest, but I didn't dare move. When morning finally came, I managed to find the trail again and make it back to my car. I never saw that man again. But I'm certain of one thing. He'd been watching me long before I noticed him. That night could have ended very differently if I hadn't run when I did. And since then, I've never gone camping alone again. Last December, my sister went on a trip over the holidays. It was for some sort of party she was flying to, so taking her dog Milo wasn't exactly convenient. She'd only be gone for a couple of days, and since I wasn't doing much that weekend, I offered to watch Milo while she was away. The apartment I lived in didn't allow pets, so instead of bringing Milo to me, I decided to stay at her house. It was about 30 minutes away. I packed my laptop, a few clothes, and some snacks, then headed down there in the morning. Just about an hour after I arrived, my sister left for her trip. Milo was a really easy dog to look after, a big, older German Shepherd who was calm and loyal. I'd watched him plenty of times before. He wasn't loud or demanding. Mostly he liked to nap near me while I worked. I set up my laptop in the spare bedroom and started my workday. Milo laid quietly beside my desk in his dog bed, eyes half open, breathing slow. For the first few hours, everything was peaceful, until he started doing something that made me uneasy. Every so often, Milo would lift his head suddenly and stare at the doorway. His ears would perk up, body tense, eyes fixed. At first, I brushed it off. Dogs hear things all the time. A branch tapping against the house, a car door slamming somewhere down the street. But Milo didn't just glance and settle back down. He'd stare, sometimes for minutes at a time. By noon, he'd done it so many times that I finally stood up and looked around the house. Milo followed me, tail low, sniffing at corners like he was searching for something. I didn't see or hear anything, but something about how alert he was made my skin crawl. When work ended around 5 or 6, I decided to take him for a walk. Behind my sister's house was a nature trail, a preserved strip of forest that looped back around after about 20 minutes. In December, though, it wasn't exactly pleasant. The trees were bare and skeletal, the air heavy and still. About halfway through the walk, Milo stopped, dead in his tracks. I tugged the leash gently, but he didn't move. He just stood there, muscles stiff, eyes fixed on something down the trail ahead. I turned to look, but there was nothing. Just the gray, lifeless trees fading into the dark. "Milo?" I whispered, trying to coax him forward. Nothing. The way he stared made me uncomfortable, so I decided to turn back. The second I did, Milo followed. He didn't sniff, didn't stop, didn't even pull. He just stayed right at my side, tail tucked. Back inside, I called my sister. She said she'd never seen him act like that and told me not to worry, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something had been watching us out there. Even in the house, Milo stayed right next to me, eyes flicking toward the windows and doors every so often. Later that night, I went upstairs to the spare room and sat down to unwind on my laptop. Milo finally laid down beside me and started to drift off. I was watching videos when, out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw something move outside the window. Just a dark shape passing by. I froze. It was quick, less than a second, but it looked like a person. Someone walking along the side of the house. By the time I got up and looked directly, there was nothing there. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination, but the uneasy feeling didn't fade. Eventually, I decided to call it a night. Before bed, I took Milo downstairs and opened the back door to let him out. The woods behind the house were pitch black, the cold December air biting at my skin. Milo hesitated before stepping outside. As he wandered into the yard, I kept an eye on him. That's when I noticed he wasn't facing the woods. He was staring off toward the side of the house, ears straight, body frozen. I leaned out just a little to see what he was looking at, and that's when a man came charging out of the darkness straight toward me. I stumbled backward, slamming the door as Milo started barking furiously, his deep growl echoing through the house. The man stopped for a split second, long enough for me to see the shock on his face, meow, then turned and ran into the woods. I locked the door and called 911 immediately. The police came, looked around with flashlights, and told me they didn't find anyone. But when they tried the back door, they discovered something terrifying. The lock didn't actually work. The lever clicked, but the latch didn't hold. The door could open freely. My sister swore it had never been broken before. That night I packed a bag, grabbed Milo, and left for a hotel. We didn't go back until she returned home. To this day I can't stop thinking about it. The broken lock, Milo's constant alertness, the shape I saw in the window. I think that man had been watching us the entire day, maybe even inside the house while I worked. And I can't shake the thought that he wasn't after my sister. He might have been after me, waiting for a night when he knew I'd be alone somewhere far quieter than my apartment. Milo saved me that night, and I'll never spend another December weekend alone in that house again.